Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Episode 2 from the National Perinatal Association annual meeting. The next few episodes will be short little interviews I did with speakers from the meeting, as well as a couple of the board members. Up first, an interview I did with Dr. Neil Shah, an OBGYN from Brigham and Women's, who has his hands in several different initiatives, from improving communication to lowering cesarean rates to organizing women's health groups. That organization, March for Moms, is having an event on the National Mall this weekend, so if you live in the D.C. area, consider checking it out. The link is in the show notes or on the website at www.obgyn.fm. I hope you enjoy this one. All right, I'm here with Neil Shah. He's an OBGYN working at Beth Israel.
Right.
Deaconess?
Yep.
Okay. And he just gave a great talk about communication and also some of the pressures that go into why our cesarean delivery rate has increased and all the complications that can go along with that. My first question for you is, you talked about there's a 15% section rate between between hospitals, especially in low-risk women. So you can go to one hospital and have a certain section rate. Same woman go to a different hospital and have a different one.
There's a 15-fold difference from one hospital to the next, yeah.
And so, in your talk, you talked a lot about the pressures that go into that. And some of those things you talked about are the number of delivery rooms, the volume, also the culture. Mm-hmm. One of the things you didn't talk about that I wanted to ask you about is the economics of childbirth and labor and how we pay for it. And how much do you think that actually affects our section rate? Because, we get paid more for doing a C-section than we do for doing a vaginal delivery. Do you think there's any effect on how it gets done?
Yeah, I think payment absolutely affects C-section rates. It's just not in the way people think. So it's not that doctors are being greedy trying to get paid more. I think in a lot of settings in 2019, it's a bundled payment or blended payment. The facility makes about 50% more for a C-section. But the real issue is not that C-sections get reimbursed more. It's that vaginal deliveries cost. The most expensive thing on a labor and delivery unit is nurse staffing. And, the longer somebody labors in a really expensive ICU-like environment, the more cost there is. And so one of the things that we've been trying to advocate for is if you want to see more vaginal deliveries in the world, rather than paying less for C-sections, we should pay more for vaginal deliveries.
Right. I absolutely agree with that. And this, one of the questions you had afterwards, which I thought was great, was about the ARRIVE trial and the maybe unintended consequences of that trial, saying inductions don't necessarily lead to C-sections, at least in the setting that the study was done in. And what does that do for the resources in a small institution? Now they're doing 50% more inductions. What does it do for staffing resources, for labor rooms, for ORs? And will that, do you think, have an effect on the section rate in those small places?
Yeah, I think those are questions that everybody is worried about because, in the 90s, most of what happened on the average labor and delivery unit was spontaneous. And today, more than half of it is scheduled. And there's an industrial engineer who told me that the best run fire station should always have people waiting around, and the best run bus station should never have people waiting around. And the problem with the modern labor and delivery unit is it has to be a bus station and a fire station at the same time. It's basically impossible.
That's great. I like that analogy. So moving on, I know you have a short amount of time today. The second one is you're working on a project to enhance communication inside labor and delivery rooms, really through a teamwork focus, and also using a whiteboard as kind of the model for that. I know you're doing what you're calling a phase 1 trial on that. What have you learned from the early part of this project about the success of something such a small kind of change? Is that making the kind of impact so far that you think it might?
Yeah, I think so. The basic idea is that the team that comes together to take care of a laboring woman comes together randomly for every woman, every time, everywhere. The nurse, the OB, they don't know who's going to go into labor that day, and the woman doesn't know who's going to be taking care of them, usually. When we're making decisions in the trenches in obstetrics, they're rarely black and white. They're often in the shades of gray. And the best decisions are made with all the information that should be available to us in the room. It lives in the brain of multiple people. And we don't have a good way of efficiently sharing the information in our brain in a way that's organized and reliable. So we designed a way, and it might not be the perfect way, but it's directionally correct. What we're finding is that, vaginal deliveries rates anecdotally seem to be going up. Near misses seem to be less frequent. But most importantly, it's restoring some dignity in the process because women feel like they're involved in their own care.
Yeah, you had a good line in your talk, which was, I'm paraphrasing, but women's goals during labor are not just about emerging unscathed.
Yeah, and forever, for about a century, the goal of obstetrics has been for people not to die.
Right.
We're not even doing that particularly well, if we're being totally honest, in the U.S. right now. But that is a low bar when we're thinking about designing the best possible system on behalf of women and families. It's really the floor. Survival is the floor.
Right. There was a great comment from one of the listeners today that was about using community resources like doulas and midwives. And I can tell from my practice that midwives bring a culture of women first and women empowerment during the labor process. And, it's okay if they want something different than you want sometimes, actually, most of the time. And I found that it has really affected the way we practice at Stony Brook, just because of having such a large midwife presence.
That makes sense, yeah.
And then the last thing is, you're, I think you created, but you're involved with, is it Moms for Moms?
It's called March for Moms.
March for Moms, okay.
That's right.
And it's a parent organization, or trying to be a parent organization of lots of other different groups that are all moving in the same direction, and you're trying to help them organize together?
That's basically right. When it comes to the well-being of moms in our country, the constituency who cares about moms is invisible. So, ACOG exists, and ACNM exists, Black Mamas Matter exists, but the actual directly affected constituency of moms with growing families, they're not organized in mass in a way that affects the way policymakers or even people in the private sector invest in their well-being. So that's really the point. We put a rock concert stage on the National Mall. This will be our third time doing it. It's going to be on May 11th, the day before Mother's Day. We're going to bring out tens of thousands of people in orange t-shirts. And on that stage, we're going to have real American families talking about their experiences and opportunities to do better.
Great. I think it's fantastic. I'm very excited, and I'll see if actually I can get mine down there myself.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
The last thing about that is you made a really, I think, a great point that we have been treating birth as a cost in the society for a very long time. And actually, this dovetails into the talk that was before you, which is about criminal justice as well. And that it's time to start thinking about it as an investment in both our communities and the future of our country, state, city, whatever it should be there. And you are doing this new thing called a City Challenge, trying to make cities kind of compete to see who can be the most friendly towards this family, because that culture then expands beyond there, right?
You got it. Yeah. It is really important to the goals of any mayor of any city to make sure they're recruiting and retaining young families. And so we should attach some metrics to what actually is in the best interests of those families, which includes a delivery system that makes sure that they're safe during childbirth, but it also means a social support system that makes sure that, after they have a baby and they're getting relentless sleep deprivation, there's a reasonable paid family leave policy. There are spaces for them to breastfeed. That there are other critical services available to them.
Right. It just highlights how much more of that goes into birthing than the actual labor process and delivering the baby. And I think thinking outside that is only going to help women and our communities as a whole.
Yes, couldn't agree more.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your time. It was very nice for you to speak with us.
Likewise. Thank you so much.